We do begin tonight with Los Angeles bracing tonight after sweeping immigration raids sparked protests and clashes tonight. A U.S. official now confirming to ABC News 700 Marines are now on their way to Los Angeles to join California's National Guard, which was deployed by the president, not that state's governor. Late this afternoon, a peaceful protest after the arrest of a union leader, but the city is bracing for nightfall. It was a far different scene over the weekend. Protesters setting off fireworks right there, police officers right nearby. A line of self-driving vehicles set on fire. Crowds shutting down the 101 freeway downtown. LAPD officers trying to move them off. The moment a U.S.-based correspondent from Australia reporting on the protests. You can see there she's hit by an officer's rubber bullet. President Trump going over the governor's head, sending the state's National Guard to the scene. And tonight he's now sending hundreds of these U.S. Marines. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, leading us off tonight on the scene in Los Angeles. Matt is one-on-one with border czar Tom Homan tonight.
Tonight, 700 Marines are on their way to the streets of Los Angeles to assist the National Guard and law enforcement tamp down violent clashes with protesters angry over the Trump administration's immigration policies and arrests. Over the past 72 hours, pockets of LA descending into chaos. Protesters setting cars on fire, dumping bikes and scooters on police cruisers on the highway. Law enforcement firing hundreds of flashbangs and non-lethal projectiles and making dozens of arrests. It got so heated in the streets that a British photographer needed emergency surgery after being struck by a non-lethal projectile.
Moving them on through the...
And there was this moment. Watch as a correspondent for 9 News Australia
You just shut the...
reporting on the protest when an officer hits her with a rubber pellet. And tonight, an escalating war of words between California Governor Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump. Newsom suing the president for creating the conditions for this chaos when he sidestepped California officials to deploy thousands of National Guard troops.
Are you going to deploy Marines in California?
We hope to have the support of Gavin because Gavin's the big beneficiary as we straighten out his problems. I mean, his state is a mess.
Newsom then slammed by Trump and border czar Tom Homan for his response to the unrest. Homan initially suggesting the governor should be arrested, something Trump seemed to support just hours ago.
I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing. He's done a terrible job.
Newsom responding again, calling that an unmistakable step toward authoritarianism. I asked Homan about that.
If Gavin Newsom crosses whatever threshold it is and violates the law, do you have the authority to arrest him or Mayor Karen Bass?
If he broke the laws like any other U.S. citizen, we'll ask the Attorney General to investigate, and they'll prosecute. Tom Homan's not going to prosecute.
Spontaneous clashes began Friday as federal agents conducted multiple operations in and around Los Angeles. By Saturday, protests, mostly peaceful, grew larger when agents were seen staging in nearby Paramount, California. And by Sunday, a convoy of heavily armed and camouflaged troops arrived. We watched as the clashes intensified as the day progressed.
Just moments ago, there's some projectiles being thrown. Just moments ago, a motorcycle seemed to try to break through the police skirmish line. And now you can hear all those flashbangs going off. Police are trying to push those protesters back, firing those less than lethals at very close range. And you can see those projectiles being thrown over. Now that motorcyclist being hauled in here, looks like he's being arrested.
LAPD's chief overnight saying they may need more help.
We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing.
And thousands today gathering peacefully, calling for the release of a prominent union leader arrested Friday during one of those workplace raids.
A lot of us are American citizens. So then what are we working for? What is the American dream? It doesn't even exist when you're picking people out of the street.
David, just want to give you a sense of where we are. This is the federal building in downtown Los Angeles, and there are probably a couple hundred peaceful protesters here outside, and you can see that line of federal agents and California National Guard. Right now, everything is peaceful, but on the other side, there are probably about 100 LAPD in riot gear. Now, Tom Homan telling me that he supports additional troops in downtown Los Angeles, but a short time ago, Governor Gavin Newsom tweeting that the presence of active duty Marines here in Los Angeles is un-American.
This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. The riots that you're seeing in Los Angeles, obviously, by now, everybody out there, especially people who listen to this channel, should know that these are government sponsored events. Human beings are not naturally organizing without the government intervening and stopping it beforehand, unless the government is actually responsible for any of the riots and chaos that occurs. So in other words, if all of us got together and we all talked about doing an actual riot and actually protesting and going somewhere like the White House, before we even arrived, the government would be at our front door, because we know through the NSA and through technology, they're listening and monitoring all of us and tracking all of us. An event like this could not naturally occur unless, of course, the government wanted it to occur. And as you've heard, the National Guard, the Marines have been deployed, and you see the confrontations in the streets between ICE agents and Mexicans, or people who are dressed, obviously hiding who they actually are by design, wearing masks. Pretty much what we saw during the Black Lives Matters movement, which was clearly another government operation, which they even eventually exposed that it was a government operation. And still people think that these things are naturally occurring. And now, since these things have started, these riots have started in LA, what we're hearing about is, what powers does Trump have to send troops to cities even if they don't want them? Because if you haven't seen, there's a map out there where there's planned events to occur on June 14th. So you're telling me that this map that is out there, that somebody, where did the government and the media get this map? This is one gigantic organization that they're telling us has been communicating, pinpointing locations, and now they're showing us where all of these false flag events are going to occur on June 14th. And they were able to figure out exactly what locations and eventually who are going to be the attendees at these locations, because this is all about Palantir. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. But look at this map. This is out there. This is being released by CNN. This is being released by NBC, ABC. Protesters are taking to the streets and community hubs nationwide on June 14th in what organizers expect will be the largest single-day anti-President Trump rally since the start of the administration. The widespread movement will run counter to Trump's multi-million-dollar military parade in D.C. Wow, what a coincidence that Trump's throwing a military parade in D.C., which has false flag written all over it. If you haven't seen, there's tanks that are heading into D.C. on June the 14th. And at the same time, these protesters decided, we're all going to organize. We're all going to say we're going to these events, these places. We're going to cause this type of chaos. We're going to burn buildings. We're going to burn cars on fire. And somehow the government hasn't intervened to stop it from occurring. What a coincidence, right? Wouldn't you think if the government had this knowledge that they would intervene and stop it from actually happening? If they're showing us this map, and they're telling us that these are where the events are going to occur, wouldn't these people be arrested ahead of time? The government has the ability to track and monitor all of this stuff. These people aren't organizing offline. And even if they are offline and they're meeting somewhere, they likely have phones in their pockets, so they're likely being listened to. If the government didn't want it to happen, the government would stop it from happening. And they go on to say, No Kings is what the name of this is. It's a nationwide day of defiance. From city blocks to small towns, from courthouse steps to community parks, we're taking action to reject authoritarianism. And of course, the we that's being referenced are obviously paid government officials. This is Black Ops, this is CIA, this is all your government agencies working together. And then what eventually happens is they organize these events, and monkey see, monkey do occurs, because there are real civilians who partake in these events because they see it happening on TV. Then they get motivated to join and find one, and that's what the government wants. And of course, you'll be detained and arrested and considered a terrorist in the United States of America. Even some of the stuff that we've seen, which is so fake and hilarious, like the Waymo cars that were lit on fire. That's one of the more popular videos going around, where you can see the Waymo cars just completely burning in the streets. And the funniest part of all is that it didn't take much for them to light those things on fire, since they're electric vehicles. All they probably did was go over there and dump a gallon of water on the engine, and the thing probably caught fire, because that's what electric vehicles do. But on top of all these things, we need to talk about Palantir. And I talked about Palantir and the kill chain. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend you check it out. This is what we need to focus on now, because the alt-right media, these people who are pretending to be conservatives, who are pretending and obviously using mind control to create racial tension and racial division, all of this stuff you hear about illegals, this is all being manufactured by the alt-right media. It's causing racial division. The government's creating false flags and psyops around the country every single day. We hear stories about a young white girl who was on a college campus, who was attacked and killed by an illegal immigrant. Every crime that you're hearing about nationally is all, again, getting linked to, oh, he was an illegal, kind of like the Molotov cocktail psyop we just heard. They threw in at the end that he was an illegal immigrant. This is all about Palantir and bringing in a digital ID. And I want to bring attention to what this is. This is military-grade surveillance tools to use on the domestic population. The conservatives are duping the same people who are supposed to be anti-government overreach, who are supposed to be anti-surveillance state, into wanting one. Because again, they think that this will be used to their benefit. But when the tables turn and they put a Democrat in power, don't you think they'll start using this against people who are anti-Pride Month and anti-LGBT and anti-you-know-what and anti-this and whatever the government deems hate speech or terrorism in the future? This technology is more than just dangerous. This is the type of technology that will enslave and cost people their lives. Laura Loomer is someone I want to bring attention to in the alt-right media. I haven't covered Laura Loomer in great detail, but this is someone with 1.7 million followers. You could see the X account where it says investigative journalist, free spirit, founder of Loomered. I don't know who would sit through or watch any of this garbage, but former Project Veritas operative, keyword operative, still an operative of the deep state of the government. And of course, America First, showing you that that star, because that's what it's all about, right? And feistiness for the synagogue of Satan. You can see Loomer with President Trump. Even Loomer, who's a member of the synagogue of Satan, very bizarre if you're a member of the synagogue of Satan that you would want to stand next to this quote-unquote replica of the Ark of the Covenant, which I covered in separate videos available on the website, that appeared at Mar-a-Lago. Well, this is one of the people who continually does stream after stream after stream that people watch and get all emotionally sucked into about mass deportations. They're creating racism. It's being created on both sides by the mainstream media. And the right does it as well with creating racism, making white people feel like they're being suppressed, and all the government wants to do is aid black people and aid Mexicans and not aid white people, put this curriculum in schools that make everybody hate white people. This is all part of their psychological war that they've created. And these people continue to feed into it instead of the people uniting together and realizing the left and right are working together to cause this division, because divide and conquer is the oldest motto in the book. So Laura Loomer every single day puts out podcasts about mass deportations now. And isn't this interesting? Laura Loomer tweets out, time to deploy Palantir to Los Angeles to deal with the illegals. You know you'd love to see it. You're lying if you say you wouldn't. Doubles down on it a few days later. I don't care. I would say it again. I don't care if Palantir surveils jihads and illegals. I want them all out of my country. Do you really think we're going to mass deport 65 million people without advanced tech? Are you that naive? Remove every single one. They are rolling out Palantir. They're getting conservatives on board with this now. Because remember, over the last couple of weeks, the pushback being given even by MAGA in regards to Palantir. Oh, wait a minute. We don't want this surveillance state. These guys sound psychotic, the things that they want to do, the databases they want to build on American citizens. Well, here's your PSYOP that's being put out there. Here's your false flags, your government stage riots that are being created deliberately, so that these same people who were against it are now saying, well, wait a minute. They can actually use that technology to ID these people and remove 65 million illegals. Well, maybe it's not as bad as it seems. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump would ever turn and use it on me. I don't think if Obama or somebody else gets put back in power in 4 years that they ever use it and turn it on me, right? And of course, ICE is paying Palantir $30 million to build an immigration OS surveillance platform. Palantir exec defends companies' immigration surveillance work. They're trying to normalize this dangerous surveillance state to conservatives who want this for their protection, to secure the border. This is all staged to sell you Palantir. That's what this is. Say it with me now. This entire event in Los Angeles is being funded by your tax money created by your government working with these fake companies like Palantir, who are really DARPA and government operations pretending to be corporations, who are removing rights from civilians, like the Fourth Amendment. And they're trying to justify this and justify a surveillance state where everyone's data is always going to be monitored and tracked by the government based on the illegal alien propaganda that they put out there. I'm not saying that there's not illegal aliens in the United States of America, but nobody would care the way they care now if it wasn't for the propaganda machine. You wouldn't even know what was happening if every day for the last 4 years you didn't see cameras from Fox News showing you people walking across the border not being stopped deliberately by the military or deliberately by border control. There was nothing. You saw people walking right in, and everyone's getting angry going, why are all these people coming in? Why isn't anyone stopping them, right? Well, because the government deliberately did it, and it wasn't just the Democrats who did it. It's the conservatives too, because they could have stopped this and can stop this at any time, but they want to bring in justice first, justice for them. You see, what they want to bring in is a border which allows people to come across only with a digital ID. And if they can bring in a digital ID system, well, then they'll stop illegals from coming in. You just have to comply to it. You just have to say, you know what? We need a digital ID system to stop the illegals from coming. So I agree to this. I agree that we all should have digital IDs. It's the only way to stop the illegal immigrant problem from occurring. Then you suddenly get actual border control once you agree to what they want, which is a digital ID. See how the pushback with the real ID? See the pushback with the digital passport when COVID was floating around? They were telling us about COVID floating around, I say, in your people's minds for the most part. There has been pushback constantly about digital ID, specifically from conservatives. And this entire Trump psyop has been to work conservatives, to make them forget about the father of the vaccine and every other thing that Donald Trump is doing, like AI governance, into thinking that all of these people crossing the border are responsible for all the crimes. They're coming for your kids. They're bringing fentanyl, even though it's really the CIA who's selling, buying, distributing fentanyl. All the trafficking of humans you hear, it's your government responsible for doing it. There's an underground city underneath our feet, an underground world. That's what's really occurring. But if they build this psyop in your mind, they'll get you to agree to a digital ID system. Palantir will come in and they'll say, hey, they're starting to identify people using their large tracking surveillance. But what's needed ultimately for this to work is that we need to get a digital ID here. So we're going to create all of these false flags around the United States. And everyone's going to be upset like they were during the Black Lives Matters movement. And now they're going to say, well, if we use Palantir and we go and look at that map that they showed us where there's going to be riots in New York, riots in Maine. I mean, they showed you pretty much every state with a little purple dot on it telling you that there's going to be riots and protests there. Government's not doing anything to stop it. The government seems to be telling you this is where they're going to occur. So where's the government to do their job? Our tax money's supposed to support, right? Stop terror event. Well, it's a peaceful protest, right? When they're lighting cars on fire and the police are fighting with civilians. Obviously, everybody knows these are not peaceful protests. They're the ones who are allowing this to occur. They're the ones responsible for these things occurring. They're the ones who are carrying these events out, hoping that you join in and participate. And they're going to come in and they're going to tell you that technology is the solution. Palantir making a database of all of these Americans who are joining in on these protests, all of these illegals who are at these protests, because they're the new domestic terror threat. Remember who the domestic terror threat was 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or 1 year ago? It was people like me and you, right? Well, now the domestic terror is the Democrats. Anyone who supports Palestine, anybody who supports the Mexicans living in America who's anti-ICE. This is a seesaw to strip us of our rights. They do it back and forth. And once you allow them to strip us of our rights, then they switch sides. And the other political party's in control. And they start stripping the other side of more of their rights. And it goes back and forth. It is a work. It is a psychological operation. The easiest proof here is the fact that the world we live in now, you couldn't get anybody to organize and actually show up at one of these events. Maybe you can organize and get people to show up at a, breast cancer awareness march, because that's like the only thing that seems to matter around America. You get all these, there's a march on Sunday for breast cancer awareness. Oh, no, do we know one person who's not aware? Of course not. Everyone's aware. People are just not aware of why breast cancer exists, why their cancer rates are so high, because they don't want to actually believe in the chemical baths that we're all getting on a daily basis and the soft metals that's being absorbed through our skin. But yeah, they could create those events naturally and organically because they're actual just peaceful events that the naive people think they're actually helping. The majority of people would hear about these protests and they'd be like, I'm not going. Why would I go? To get arrested? To show up at one of these events and get arrested? We live in a weak society. Very, very weak, as you obviously can see. They're not getting this many people to go and do these types of things, knowing they can go to jail for 20 to 50 years, or however long the government deems, once they deem you a terror threat. The government is staging this. The government's telling you where they're going to occur, and the government's doing nothing to stop them from occurring, other than telling you that they're going to happen and trying to encourage you to go and show up at these events by telling you that these are anti-Trump rallies. And then having all the Democrat people out there talking about, yeah, I'm going to show up there. Yeah, you should show up there. Yeah, we should all show up in unison. And then a government operative can, set something on fire, create a bomb, create an attack, create a killing. And then, of course, what happens to the idiots that show up there? Well, they're linked to some type of an event because that's what the government wants to do. And they add you to their terror list. This is as strategic as it gets. These events are as fake as they get. And by fake, I don't mean it's green screen. I mean that it's staged. It's government ops. They're the only ones who can carry these things out and execute them. If me or you tried to carry out any type of protest anywhere, they would intervene. If we tried to carry out a protest outside of the White House, talking about how the left and right is fake, talking about how they work together, all the stuff that we've all discussed over the years, they would show up at my front door today and arrest me for conspiracy to commit a terror act or whatever they want to word it as. They would stop all of us from the event ever occurring. It wouldn't make the national news because they wouldn't even allow us to carry it out because then people go, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? They think they put on the national news? Hey, this YouTuber, when they showed up there, a bunch of people, thousands of them. People go, thousands of people showed up? What do they actually believe in? That's a lot of people that showed up. Oh, they believe that the left and right are working together, divide and conquer. People might go, wow, wait a minute. Maybe there is something to that. So they wouldn't even allow it. They'd stop it before we even had the chance to get in our cars to show up at it. Let alone in this case, right? They're not only are they not stopping it, and they're deploying, possibly martial law here in the coming days, they're telling you where they're all going to occur and telling you they're not going to do anything about it. While Trump, on the same day as this, is having a military parade where there's going to be massive tanks and weaponry outside of the White House. Can you say government psyop? Can you say black ops, CIA creation? That's what this is. Don't forget when we're talking about who is responsible for all these things again, the clip that I've used for you a lot, and I'll continue to show you it. Remember this guy? He's a member of the Mossad, and he openly was on 60 Minutes talking about how the world's their stage and they manufacture and produce the news.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
It's all a production, ladies and gentlemen. It's a production. The news is a fictional tool that they use to tell you that this is the reality of the world. They script it. They carry out these events. This is what your government does. You ever wonder what they're doing at the CIA and the FBI when all these crimes are committed and nothing's ever being stopped? They're just monitoring, tracking you. And then they're carrying out these events with actors and people that are military operatives who go into training and then they're trained. I mean, like the people scaling the walls on January 6th, and people actually saw that and thought regular people were able to scale walls like that and they weren't black ops. This is what your government does. They stage this. This is all psychological. Divide and conquer. The most common sense thing anyone could say when they see this is they should be connecting the dots with Palantir, and then they should also be looking at that map. They should be saying, if they're telling us that all these protests are going to happen, all these events, who is the one organizing it? What a great organizer this person is. Is one person organizing it? Oh, a couple of groups, and the government hasn't interfered. They haven't intervened and stopped it. They didn't show up at anyone's door and say, you're not doing this. We're not having this event occur. It's going to, violence is going to occur, blah, 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 blah. No, they're not. They're encouraging you to join it. Government Op 101. one. Watch where this goes, especially with Palantir and the alt-right media getting their audience on board with digital surveillance. Saying, the exact quote from this Laura Loomer, of course, of the Synagogue of Satan, the exact quote, "I don't care if they surveil jihads and illegals. Do you think we're going to be able to deport 65 million people without advanced technology? Are you that naive? Bringing in advanced technology to pretend that it's going to be used on illegals until they flip the switch and use it on Christians and everybody else who disagrees with this enslavement digital grid that they're bringing in. And then it'll be too late because everybody will have fallen for the PSYOPs hook, line, and sinker and giving government total control over every single thing, including every movement and every breath you take." PSYOP 101, ladies and gentlemen. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.